Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest episode of Low on the Go, your sports fix. I am your host, Russ Lowe, and we are 2 full weeks into the season, and now we are ready to talk about college football and what we know at this point. What is out there for us to look at? What can we grasp from the early results of the season? And can we take and run with these things and see if they're going to be the same at the end of the year, or will things change? What are the trends right now? We're going to take a look at how the conferences are doing as a whole after the first couple of weeks. And we're also going to look at some emerging teams from each conference. We're going to have one from each of the Power 5 conferences, and it's going to give us an indication of who is going to challenge the top dogs. So the teams that we talk about are not necessarily going to be the favorites from each conference, but we're going to look at an emerging team from each one as we go here today. Well, the fight for top conference, no doubt, is between the SEC and the Big Ten. And if you take a look at this breakdown, you see that the SEC, in my opinion, is still the best overall conference in college football. And the reason why is because you have many more teams. The depth is spread out more evenly across the landscape of the SEC. In the Big Ten, you do have emerging teams that have come forward, but not as many. In other words, Ohio State and Michigan State are really the power teams from the Big Ten right now. They're the ones that are doing well and are expected to do well. But who else do you really have? Wisconsin is faltering. They've already suffered a quick loss to Alabama. Minnesota is emerging, but they've been a bottom feeder for a long time. Indiana is not any good. Purdue is not any good. Illinois has had some tough times firing a head coach right before the beginning of the season. So you see the depth and the expectations from the Big Ten from top to bottom is not very good. And in a comparison basis with the SEC, we'll just take a look at the West alone, for example. In the Southeastern Conference, you've got 5 or 6 strong teams each year. Most of that division is competing for a top 10 spot, a playoff spot, a national championship opportunity. You know, you take a look at Alabama, who is playing well. Yeah, they looked a little flat against Middle Tennessee State last weekend, but they've done a great job. Coker's coming on strong at quarterback. Nick Saban always has a team ready. He's always got somebody able to plug into a position and play, and you don't have to worry about freshman mistakes or errors on the field. They're coached up and they're ready to play. Auburn, Jeremy Johnson, the Auburn defense coached by Will Muschamp. Yeah, they had some problems last week. Jacksonville State gave them a game and nearly upset them, and that's got everybody jumping off the bandwagon there. But Auburn still won the game. Auburn's still 2-0, and they have a big clash with LSU coming up this week. It's going to be a huge encounter there. Texas A&M is looking strong. Kyle Allen in at quarterback has done a tremendous job, and Texas A&M has a John Chavis defense. They're going to be tough. They are an emerging power in the West Conference, in the West Division, and Texas A&M is looking good right now as we spring out of the gates in the college football season. Also, you got to give credit to Les Miles. He's quite a character at times, but he has developed Brandon Harris into the starting quarterback for the LSU Bengal Tigers, and suddenly they're looking good. Their defense is also trying to step up. You also have a Heisman contender in running back Leonard Fournette. So LSU's got everything going for them right now as well. And, you know, you can't leave Ole Miss out of the mix. All of a sudden, Ole Miss, who came into the year as a contender based solely on their defense, and now Ole Miss is looking strong because you've got Chad Kelly. He is the nephew of Buffalo Bill former great Jim Kelly, and he is cultivating his skill. He's a junior, and he is coming in, and he's got 2 more years to lead this Ole Miss program. And when you have quarterbacking in your bloodlines, it just seems to carry through. It seems to have something special there to look forward to. I think Chad Kelly will impress as the year goes on, and Ole Miss is going to look like a contender as well. The test for them is going to second-ranked Alabama this weekend. That's going to be another major collision in the SEC. And then you've got Georgia, who has Grayson Lambert, the transfer from Virginia. Georgia always has a stout defense. They're going to be the main contender in the East. Tennessee might emerge. Missouri could be out there on the fringe. But the East is Georgia's to take if they want it. If they assert themselves in the regular Mark Richt fashion, Georgia should take the East. So when I look at all that, I see 6 or 7 powerful teams, and I still wouldn't give up on Brett Bielema either at Arkansas. Yes, they took a tumble. Toledo upset them. A MAC conference team upsets an SEC West power. I get that, but that doesn't mean they can't bounce back. Arkansas still has plenty of talent. They've been ravaged a little bit by injuries, but I think they're still going to be able to at least be in the mix throughout the year in some of the games they face. So when I look at all that, I see the SEC is so, as I said before, spread out. The depth, the power of the conference is spread out more evenly. You used to have just a couple, maybe 3 teams in the SEC that dominated and everybody else was giving chase. Nowadays in the SEC, you have 7 or 8 teams that are equivalent for the most part, and it's their emerging play in certain units that makes the difference down the stretch. So the SEC still the top-notch, top quality from top to bottom, great conference, best conference. Big Ten, yeah, you're improving, but you've got a ways to go, and we'll see how that fight continues throughout the year. The ACC is slowly rising. Very impressed with what the ACC is doing. You know, Florida State and Clemson, these are programs now that are going to be part of regular success in the recruiting division, in the recruiting area. Both of these teams are able to get players every year because of where they're located. Clemson, of course, being in South Carolina, pulls away some of Steve Spurrier's recruits. There's no doubt competition there for them. And, of course, Florida State is going to compete somewhat with the Gators and the Miami Hurricanes for all of Florida's talent base that could be eligible for recruitment there. And those two teams right now are in the mix. If you talk about top 10, top 12 programs, Florida State and Clemson currently are there. And if you look in the very near horizon now, you see Georgia Tech coming in. Georgia Tech looking strong, folks. Paul Johnson has a nice program there. He's a great head coach. He's got a quarterback. They run the triple option. Justin Thomas is the quarterback. They run the triple option. They do a great job with that. It throws a lot of teams off on their defensive coverage. And Georgia Tech can be a powerhouse, and they too will have a challenge this week as they face top 10 foe Notre Dame. That's going to be a good game. Notre Dame will be tested without Malik Zaire as their quarterback. He's out for the year after one of the multitude of injuries that Notre Dame has faced. And we'll see who can come out on top in that battle this coming weekend. You also look at the fact that North Carolina, NC State, Notre Dame, as I said, moving up. Notre Dame officially not really part of this conference, but they play an ACC-dominated schedule. They're part of the conference, but they're not, if that makes sense. They're not formally a member, but they play an ACC schedule with 8 teams and then 3 non-conference games. So that's what Notre Dame faces. Miami's on the hot seat. This is a program, you know, you look at the Miami Hurricanes, and you look at other traditional power teams like Tennessee, like Texas, like Michigan, teams that in the past have been dominant. They've been superb in their performances. They've won bowl games. They've won regular season victories. They've been the top dog on the mound, so to speak. These are programs that have to get back. You know, you look at these teams and you see how traditionally they've done, and they've not been that relevant in past years, or they've been inconsistent. They've been on and off with it. So Miami is in that hot seat right now. I think Al Golden needs to win and be competitive in this ACC as it climbs towards respectability, because the teams are getting better, the competition's getting better, and the ACC is getting stronger. There used to being a basketball conference, basketball domination. Now you can say the ACC is at least a slowly emerging power in college football. In the Big 12, I think things are sort of questionable there. I mean, I like TCU and Baylor. I respect what those programs have done. Great head coaches, Gary Patterson at TCU, Art Briles at Baylor. They've changed the landscape. These teams weren't relevant 10 years ago. And now here they are competing not only for a Big 12 championship, but they're also competing for respectability in the college football playoff. And both teams were really close knocking on the door last year, and they didn't get it done. But still, the fact that they are now year in, year out, perennial contenders to the title makes them forces to be reckoned with. And I believe that Oklahoma and Texas have fallen off lately. Yes, that's true. But they're both reemerging as a power. I had a chance to see the Oklahoma-Tennessee game in person last weekend. And I tell you, I'm very impressed with what Oklahoma has. You have a Texas Tech transfer in Baker Mayfield that could not be shaken. He could not be sacked. He could not be taken out of his game. Mentally, he had it going on. He really was focused. He did not let Tennessee's defense rattle him or force him into mistakes, and that was key. His leadership on the field, his poise, his ability to just keep it together kept Oklahoma's effort together, and I think it made a big difference. Sterling Shepard at wide receiver. Of course, we all know Bob Stoops, tremendous head coach. He coaches up to a certain level. There are times he can't win the big games, but Bob Stoops is still a great head coach. He's one of the best in the business, and he got a big win last week in Neyland Stadium. That was a huge challenge for Oklahoma, and they came through. And Eric Stryker on defense, this young man is incredible. He's only going to get better. Seems like he gets better with each performance. So Oklahoma's really built themselves up to be a power once again. And I think Texas will get there. Texas is falling on some current hard times, but the Longhorns are really they always seem to have the catalyst there for a good recipe to put it together. And they're starting to get things on track. Yeah, they got rid of Mac Brown, or he resigned and took off. He was able to walk away from the program. You just lose your athletic director after 2 years. Steve Patterson was recently fired. But Texas has good plans in place. I think Charlie Strong as head football coach, and even Shaka Smart as the head coach for men's basketball, are going to begin to make differences with that program. And I think Texas is going to reemerge a little quicker than some of these other programs because they just have it in their DNA. That's who Texas is. They're a tough, gritty, blue-collar, hard-working school, and they just seem to get things done. And I think they're going to bounce back fairly quickly. So the Big 12, a bit questionable, but yeah, I think they're going to bounce back. They're going to show some things. They're going to stay competitive. One beef I do have with the Big 12. Come on, guys, play a conference championship game for goodness sake. All the other members do that. Everybody else does it. SEC does it. Big 10, ACC, Pac-12. They all have a conference title game. It's only fair if you're going to call these guys the group of five or the Power Five, whatever you want to call them. They should all uniformly do the same thing. Big 12, schedule a conference championship game, play it with the same bravery and fervor you play your other games, and you might start getting a little bit more respect in the chase for the college football playoff. The Pac-12, they're faltering in my opinion. Already on the ropes a little bit. Here's why. First of all, let's start with the strong points. USC and UCLA have come out of the gates firing. They're massive. They're loaded. They're like the Florida of the West Coast. They always reload. Very seldom do you have problems. You have coaches that coach there. Steve Sarkisian at USC, Jim Mora at UCLA. They get 9, 10, 11 wins a season. Great accomplishment for them. But I look at the immediate underbelly of the Pac-12, and I see that Oregon, Arizona State, Washington, and Stanford have already lost games in the first 2 weeks. So I see the Pac-12 trying to remain relevant, and maybe they will be more relevant as the season goes on. But at this point, I see them a lot like the Big Ten. I see 2 or 3 heavyweights, and then I see a conference full of ne'er-do-wells. So let's see if the Pac-12 bounces back from their early early demise, so to speak. Now, teams to watch in each league. Through the first 2 weeks, we've seen contenders. Talked about the SEC. Everybody looks at Alabama each and every year as the main contender. They're almost always in the mix. But as I said before, watch Texas A&M. Let's watch the Aggies as we go into conference play. Many of the conferences began conference play already a game or so ago, but now we're really getting into the conference mix. And Texas A&M is going to have big matchups coming up with Alabama and Auburn. It's going to prove if they are ready to contend. Can Kyle Allen keep his poise and his effort going strong and lead this team? Can John Chavis's defense come in and make a difference? Texas A&M's played a couple of cupcakes, as many teams already have. They'll be truly tested in games coming up in the immediate weeks on the schedule. But Kyle Allen has shown leadership. I mean, this is a young man that has a 61% completion rate. Last year, he had 1,028 pass yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions for the year. And again, just the poise, the leadership that these young men can show as quarterbacks makes a big difference for their team, and Kyle Allen is in that situation. So look for A&M to do something special. Michigan State, you've got Connor Cook at quarterback. You've got a tough defense. Mark D'Antonio as head coach. Michigan State is going to be right there knocking on the door with Ohio State. They meet later in the year. That is basically going to be the precursor to the championship game. It may be championship game number 1 with the actual Big Ten title game hanging in the balance later on. Georgia Tech, you know by now that I love them in the ACC. I think they're going to be the surprise team that wins the conference. The triple option offense, they always have a tough defense. Paul Johnson has become a great head coach. If Georgia Tech wins the ACC alone, he may become coach of the year. In the Big 12, as I said, Oklahoma, it's not all about TCU or Baylor anymore. Yes, they've been the emerging teams over the past 5-6 years. They've really stepped their programs up to a new level. But Oklahoma has been at that level. Yeah, they may have faltered last year. I think that's why people are tending to look away from them, is because of the fact that Oklahoma had 5 losses last year. But each year is different, and I think they're going to bounce back. And watch for UCLA, folks, in the Pac-12. You know, Oregon has shown their defense has the propensity to let up points this year. You know, and some of the other contenders aren't proven yet. Stanford and Oregon have already lost big games. So let's see what UCLA does with Josh Rosen, a really good freshman quarterback in there. Jim Mora is the head coach. Improved recruiting in his 4th year starting with this organization. I think the Bruins are going to have a special year. And they've got a big clash with BYU coming up this weekend as well. So watch out for the Bruins to try to overtake things in the Pac-12. Well, that's a little bit of what we know right now in college football. What a fun season it's already began with. The first 2 weeks have been exciting. We've already seen an upset or two here and there. We've already seen some big clashes in the early games. We've seen Michigan State surpass Oregon. We've seen some other big games as well. And there's going to be more. There's going to be plenty more to come over the next several weeks as we see the landscape changing in college football. So, folks, make sure you like the videos, subscribe to the channel if you get a chance, and check me out on lowonthego73@gmail.com if you want to leave any comments about the show, or do it at the bottom of the screen. Welcome any of your comments at any time. And we always look forward to having you folks in for Low on the Go, your sports fix for this week. We'll see you on the next episode, folks. Have a good one.